encounter.
I've got another feeling.
It feels very
Hello and welcome to the Unwanted Opinion podcast, the show in which me and my friends give our unwanted opinion on all things film. My name is Lewis and I'm joined today with Kyle.
Hello.
Hello, and Gonzalo.
Hey, I believe the proper proposition there is by and not with.
Wait, what?
Shut up.
What did I
Joined
say?
by, not joined with.
Oh my god, you know, this guy's coming in here trashing my presenting skills.
What a
but,
terrible start to this week. Or a great start to this week.
I know.
Or a great
I know,
start,
we don't know,
yeah,
we
because,
don't know.
I mean, given what all the recent events, honestly, let's not talk about all the recent events, because, oof,
But we have
They
Doctor
are.
Who on
Well, actually-
Saturday.
Eventful.
Actually, since you are my Spanish correspondent,
Yes.
Gonzalo, who did get elected as president of Spain?
Okay, so Pedro Sanchez got elected as president of Spain, but he didn't really get elected. The way Spanish politics work is that you have to have a majority, more than 50% of the vote
No, they just-
for your party in order to get elected. And the problem is nobody had more than 50% of the vote, so they had to make concessions and ally themselves with different third-party parties, basically, and try to make like an agglomeration government. It happened in the last election,
yeah.
and in this
So,
election, even though the biggest
Coalition.
vote was for the Partido Popular, which is the right-leaning party. The left-leaning one made a lot of concessions with a lot of separatist parties and ended up
We
becoming...
hate those droids. But
Yeah.
I don't.
Thank you.
I
thank
don't.
you.
No, I don't
think
want to.
anyone...
I don't want to actually distinguish Gonzalo's own knowledge of his own government, but I'm pretty sure that
Yes.
what they do isn't it to do with the magic horse that
Yes.
sits there and it walks up to one of them.
And if
But
it
if I'm
bows,
right in
then
saying,
it's because they're a
yeah,
good person.
But
Yeah.
if I'm
Oh
right in
my
saying that the
God,
previous party like killed the horse,
They killed
and
the horse, yeah.
reanimated it.
In order to fake
only
the
have-
election.
you only have
Yeah. How did you know?
really in the know
I-
Harry Potter fans understand what you just talked about.
forgot about this whole plot point until you brought it up, by the way. So, curse
Is it
you
also
for
a very
putting this back in
clearly
my head.
dead magical horse? That was
Yes,
used to
it
vote in
looks.
the
It
president?
looks very pale.
Right. Okay. I'm calling time on this nonsense. Thank
Yeah.
you for. I don't think people expected. This
Little
to be a
did people
political
know they had
broadcast,
twins.
podcast. But look,
There were
talking
two
about films
horses.
again.
Yes.
On today's episode, we are finally talking about Ridley Scott and our favourite Ridley Scott films, because Napoleon is releasing this week.
Yes,
And
that's
we can have a
Bonaparte.
review
Yes.
for.
Not Dynamite.
Yes, we have a review for Anatomy of a Fall. So, let's get right into that. So, Anatomy of a Fall was directed by Justine Triet and written by Arthur Harari. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right.
Very well said.
It stars... Thank you. It stars Sandra Hüller, Swan Arlod, Anthony Renard, Samuel Thies, and Milo Mikado Granet. It's French.
I was about to say,
Right,
is this a
Yeah.
foreign film?
Yes, it is a French film. It's main language, mainly French. 50, a bit English, and a tiny bit German as well. So a multitude of
Really
languages going on
covering
here.
all boundaries. I love it.
Covering all of Europe, Kel. 2 countries. Right, so Sandra Hüller plays, her character's name is also called Sandra, so there's a bit of confusion there. Sandra is a novelist and lives in a reclusive life in the French Alps with her husband Samuel and her son Daniel, who was blinded in an accident years before this film takes place. One morning, a student comes to interview Sandra, but she's quickly disrupted by her husband's construction work and deafening looping music. The interview starts and they're sort of refurbing this nice chalet to make like a B&B, an Airbnb joint,
Right.
and he purposely or maybe accidentally disrupts their interview. So once that happens, the interview is called off, and Daniel too vacates to take his guide dog for a walk. And upon his return, about an hour later, the snow is now red, and his father lies dead. Now, there's 3 questions that remain: was this an accident? Was it a suicide? Or did Sandra kill her husband? So, Anatomy of a Fall won this year's Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is, the jury's choice for best film, and I think it was a rightful winner. I think this is an enthralling film. It's about the complexities of human relationships and sort of the myriad of how we are perceived by the outside world. Because what you're getting here, Kyle, is that this is mainly a courtroom thriller. There's only like a couple locations here. It's the house and the courtroom. Those are really kind of the only two locations you get.
Okay.
And it comes in at about 2.5 hours long, but it does not feel it. It's really captivating. I mean, and so much of that comes from Huller's performance, who is like, because she is so self-assured in who she is and what her relationship was with her husband, you then get to see like the gears moving in her head as she starts to realize how she and her relationship is being perceived from the outside world. And I love that whole sort of dawning thing. And yet, even still, she's so self-assured and convinced in her belief. And of course, look, the film is purposely ambiguous in as if this was a murder, a suicide, or even an accident. The film, of course, the court does come to a decision in the film, but even still, there is no clear answer. And I think that's a great thing. Actually, I think Sandra Hüller asked Justine, the director, part of the way through shooting, is like, "Oh, tell me, what was it? What actually happened?" And she went, "No, no one will ever know. No one will ever know but me." No, she never told Sandra what happened, right? And I love that because she said, if I do that, basically the performance might be ruined because you'll know what happened.
Right.
But as an actor, you can't know. It has to be played ambiguous. And I think Hüller is phenomenal. I think it's one of the best performances this year. I really hope she gets an Oscar nomination for this, because there's one scene in particular as well, which I won't spoil, of course, which is just enthralling. And it's a really long conversation scene. I think it goes on for like 5-10 minutes. And you're just like, you want it to keep going. You never feel like, oh, this is getting boring, we need to move to the next scene. And as a screenplay, it's brilliant. I think this is the best, one of if not the best written film of the year. It's all conversation. It's just so impactful.
I love a all conversation film.
Yeah, and you spend a lot of time in this courtroom, and the way the defense and the prosecution is constantly, their arguments are so good because you're constantly swaying each way of what is this, and then when you hear more evidence and all these things pile up, you as an audience member are constantly flip-flopping. You're like, what is the truth here? And I love that. I mean, the whole film is just about this woman dawning, this whole realization of, oh my god, is this who I am? And then having to be like, no, I was this person.
I want to ask, because when you were describing the characters, you specifically mentioned that the son was blind. Does that play a big factor?
Yes, because of obviously it's like what, and there's a whole bit about
as a witness sort of thing, like
as a witness sort of thing, exactly. And they have to be like, how do you? Because he claims he heard something. He heard like, because of there's this whole thing about there was an argument before you left to walk the dog, and he has to tell them, no, that wasn't the case, this is actually what was happening. And then they end up trying to disprove him in a really cool way. I don't want to really give much more away than that.
Disprove him being you're blind, you didn't see it.
But also in the like fundamental relationship, as a relationship, how his accent affects their entire marriage. And you don't get to see any of the accent. He's like literally like 11 years old in this film. This happened 7 years ago in terms of the film's timeline. But the way the accent had an effect on their marriage, and that you get to see in retrospect now that the husband is gone, it plays a really huge part, and it's really fascinating.
Do you know what the accent was? Are you just saying it for spoiler reasons, or do you have no clue?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to tell you, but
no, that's fine. I just
yeah.
He was walking across the street in New York, toxins and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly, Daredevil style.
Yeah.
and speaking of Daniel, Milo, who plays him, what a role this kid had to play. I think he's like 13 in real life, and my god, like, really terrific performance. Like, he has a lot on his shoulders, and especially towards the second into the third act sort of thing, his character takes some really interesting turns, because he becomes obsessed with the case, and he goes to the court every day, even though he's warned by the judge and so on. you're going to listen to stuff and details about your parents' marriage that you really don't want to know, and this could affect you psychologically, and yet he still goes. And I think I have a whole idea about, like justice is blind sort of thing, and I think I have an idea of like what his character sort of means in that sort of way. But phenomenal. Like he has a lot of emotion on his shoulders, and he really. I would. Currently, I'd put him in best supporting actor category. I think he's that good.
Really?
I think he's brilliant.
I think
does
his
brilliant.
character, in the least spoilery way, do you see his character change, like what the judge suggests? Like,
I think he obviously he knows more details about his mum and dad than, of course, the rest of us or the jury or the judge, anything like that. So he has a bit more insight, but there's still mysteries that he doesn't know about. And there's even points where obviously he's hearing both sides of the argument, and he had a much closer relationship with his dad than his mother, and that plays a whole big part in it. It's a really layered film. There's so many pieces to it, and there's so much to unpack with it. And with that, I was really floored by it. I think there's so much to it. I think every performance, the prosecutor and the prosecutor and the defendant's lawyer are both also are just brilliant actors. They're so engrossing. The prosecutor has this whole sort of like agency to him, and he is so passionate about wanting to put her away that you kind of fall in love with his charisma. Like it's so he's that good, and his arguments are just so like engrossing and just like, oh wow, maybe you're right. And it's like, should I believe him? Is he just doing this to put her away and win a case? It's really enthralling. I mean, genuinely, like, this is the best courtroom stuff of the year. Like, I know Oppenheimer came out and that was the courtroom stuff, and that was great. Obviously, it was technically a courtroom, and technically what they say in the film,
room,
but the hearing and stuff like that. But this is like, wow, this is just like you're in some scenes last 20 minutes or so in the courtroom, and you're just like with it. It's just so enthralling, and I love the heart of the film as well. And Huller, Sandra's character, she's a very, very flawed person, and the whole film is done very naturalistically. It feels very real. It's not like incredible, like huge shot setups. It's all fairly standard in terms of cinematography, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter. It all really comes down to the performance in the script, and it's well directed. And there are some obviously really impactful shots, like the whole shot of the body lying on the ground. I think it's the poster of the film as well. It's just what a great frame that is. But yeah, I loved Anatomy of a Fall, and that's whole dissection of who you are as a self and how every person sees you in a different light, slightly differently. And I love that whole and uncovering truth and realizing what your marriage was, what your relationship is, who you are as a person, and uncovering memory and sort of having to decipher, is my own experience false? Did I read that wrong? Yeah. And that whole sort of self-doubt and questioning.
You're questioning yourself.
I think it's just, I think it's absolutely one of the best of the year.
I'm going to ask you just two things. I'll ask you the score but I want to ask you first. Is this only cinema, or is this going to be like a movie sort of streaming?
It's not a movie film. Genuinely, it's quite funny because when you go to a lot of these independent films, they have more logos than like big blockbusters because so many people have to fund the film. And I was like, oh my god, it's like 7 logos here. I'm like, when's the film going to start? But yeah, I don't know when it's coming to anything like rent or streaming or anything like that. It's still in cinemas now, and I think it's going to be still in like a select.
I imagine if it gets some Oscar buzz, then usually some streamers try and push that out.
I really hope this gets a Best Picture nomination.
Sky Cinema does it as well sometimes. With those songs. Yeah,
I mean like, because it was a Palme d'Or winner as well, it's obviously already got that critic clout, and like the Palme d'Or winner last year, Triangle of Sadness, got a Best Picture spot as well. So I can't see it not being there when I'm thinking about the 10 nominations. I really think it really does deserve a spot. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I'm giving it, Kyle, a 10 out of 10. November.
Oh my god!
I think the last few films we've seen this year, I've not got below like a 7 in a while. You know that, Kyle? Like, It's been like week after week. We had like, you know, like within like the past month, I've given 3 10 out of 10s, and I gave none for the whole first 10 months of the year.
What did you
Genuinely,
10 out of 10?
Killers of Flower Moon, Anatomy
yes.
of a Fall, and All of Us Strangers. I give it a 10 out of 10 as well. So it's
been
been
the Andrew Scott, Paul Mescal one. Is that the
yeah. So honestly, Kel, it's going to be a tough race for who's getting my number one spot this year, because it's looking tight. But yeah, go see Anatomy of a Fall. I hope it's playing in cinemas near wherever you are, and when it comes to streaming or whatever, I'm sure I will try my best to keep an eye on it so I can recommend it to people. Okay, and that was Anatomy of a Fall.
Quite a surprising review.
Guys,
good to know, though.
A surprising review.
Yeah,
I honestly didn't know I was going to have that opinion because of
I'm impressed you kept quiet the entire time. But anyway,
yes.
There's all this smoke and mirrors. The real thing is, we're recording this a week before we see Anatomy of a Fall, and we've just added the review there. So
you've ruined the magic of cinema.
Just destroyed the magic of podcasts.
I'm sorry.
Is there such a thing as the magic of podcasts?
But look, let's get right in. Well, that sounds inappropriate. Let's start talking about Ridley Scott.
Okay, given how crazy and unhinged this episode is already being, I feel like it's the perfect attitude to go into Ridley Scott as a director, because he is very much crazy and unhinged. I would say he's one of those directors who are both brilliant and what the fuck did I just watch?
Oh yeah,
yes. Yeah. Ridley Scott. So Ridley Scott is now he's born in 1937.
Yes.
So he's now
85.
85. Yeah.
He was born during the freaking Depression.
In 15 days.
He was born during the Great Depression, guys.
Mad. Yeah.
God
Ridley Scott is a really interesting director because he's one of these long-standing directors. You know, you've got your Martin Scorsese's, your Steven Spielbergs. God, I can't even think of anyone else who's been working as long as him and is still alive.
It's
and
hard to.
Basically had such a fascinating career because, you know, when we talk about all-time classics, of course some of his films get mentioned, and I'm sure some of them will get mentioned here today.
For sure, yeah.
But unlike Scorsese and Spielberg, he is a far less consistent director. I'd even say Spielberg had a period where he was a bit off, but I think recently he's brought back his movie magic. But Ridley Scott is interesting. You really do not know what you're going to get when you go into a Ridley Scott film. No. He will like hit it out of the park one year with like The Martian, and then the year before he made Exodus, Gods and Kings, and The Counselor.
Yes.
You know, like you don't know what you're getting, and then you know, in the same year he'll make The Last Duel and then House of Gucci. So you really are just it's just a pure mixed bag with Ridley Scott. Yeah. Perhaps his worst film is House of Gucci.
I will say he is interesting. I will say even in some of his worst films, there's always a clear intention behind them. When we talk about like bad Ridley Scott films, we're not talking about the same bad as when you watch like a bad Marvel movie where you're like, this is completely soulless and feels like an algorithm wrote it. No, like it's bad in a way that you feel like they were trying to do something and failed to do that something, which is a caveat I am sad that I have to make, but that is a positive in this day and age of filmmaking. So
no, yes, I mean I obviously we're talking about him for a very good reason. He's made absolutely iconic, incredible pieces of work, and we don't know how Napoleon's going to be. We're going to talk about that next week. It looks cool, but there's an attitude I love about Ridley Scott, and even when you disagree with him, which I will disagree with them when we talked about my film, but I love the fact that when you've listened to any behind the scenes stuff, he just doesn't care about your opinion. Like when talking about like on the Prometheus commentary, he was like talking about his cast and his actors and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I want to have something this way," and then the actors were like, Ridley, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do that? And Ridley Scott just sometimes when you're directing, you just have to tell people to fuck off, man. Like, you don't get it. I've been making films for like 50 years. Just why are you asking me questions? I've made so many films.
He's like, should we be running away from the rolling over spaceship? No. You're running directly ahead of it. Okay.
I just love his old attitude. He's just like, oh, fuck off when it's talking about certain things. He's actually very funny. funny to listen
he
to.
feels like a very grumpy old man, and I can get behind that.
Is he one of the oldest working directors at the moment?
Most likely, yeah.
Clint Eastwood is still technically working. I actually forgot to mention Clint Eastwood. He's
could you call what he does work though?
Lewis's favorite director, Roman Polanski. He's still working.
Jesus!
Oh
no.
God! Is that your favorite director, Lewis?
I have to put a statement out there. He is not my favorite director.
Okay, just making sure.
I don't know why Kyle's saying that. He's throwing me under the bus.
But
anyway, let's talk about some goddamn movies here.
Yeah.
Gothal, I'm going to come to you first.
Okay, well,
Ridley
I'm going to
Scott
start with arguably one of his best, most well-known films that's turned into a franchise that he lost control over and then got control over again, and then people got disappointed.
And he lost control of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with Alien. Solid ass horror blockbuster. One of my favorite creature flicks out there. Absolutely astounding. I don't think anyone could have done this movie any better than he did. The thing with Ridley Scott is that he's a fucking weirdo, and he's into some weird shit. He likes a lot of philosophy.
So Sigourney Weaver in underwear. That's what he likes.
No, but the man is fucking obsessed with like the idea of religion and belief, and like the origins of like human consciousness and shit like that. And even in a movie as like seemingly standard as Alien is, which, like, you know, if it was made nowadays, it would be a very simple plot. Hey, there's an alien losing a spaceship, it slowly kills everyone until there's the one survivor, and then they manage to escape. That it's a very simple horror premise. It's very much every single slasher, but in space. And he somehow manages to bring this whole texture and aesthetic and meaningfulness to it. So first of all, he grounds it a lot. This movie is a very weirdly grounded movie where, like, we're not seeing some space rangers or some fancy galactic explorers or some scientists and stuff. These are basically space truckers. They're just people who do a bunch of shitty work for a soulless corporation and risk their lives on a day-to-day basis by the chance that they can get some money. This already gives a lot of character to the crew, and the crew of the Nostromo is one of the best aspects of the movie. They're all incredibly memorable. Their dynamics are fantastically believable and gritty and realistic. And I say gritty and realistic not in the sense that, like, they're grounded, basically. Like, these are characters. They're actual characters, very flawed, very human characters. They have dynamics that seem to have started way before the movie did, which, again, basic shit for filmmaking, but in this day and age, you know, you never know. So just if you've never seen a movie older than the 2010s, sometimes characters are written to have like stuff happen to them before the movie starts. So yeah, really, really interesting, really good. It really gets you to give a fuck about these people, whether in a positive or negative way. There's people you like more, people you dislike more, and actually having these characters who are basically going to be fodder for this alien be interesting characters. It really makes it effective because you are constantly rooting for them to survive, not because you like them, but because they're human beings. It gets you to empathize with them at a human level, and that makes the horror even more horrific. It really does like drive into this whole cosmic horror, and I think that's a thing some of the future movies lost in the franchise. And weirdly, one of the things that Ridley brought back when he started doing the sequels, despite how divisive they were, like, it's this whole idea of like, yeah, we're not even a speck of dust in this. Like, there's a fucking thing here. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know what it is.
Makes you feel incredibly...
It really makes you feel so fucking small. Like, you have no idea what is out there in the universe. You have no idea where this comes from, how it works. And, like, throughout the whole story, you're kind of learning that there's... like, these people are not in control even of what they do. Throughout the movie, it is revealed as it goes along that them going down to, like, respond to that signal and stuff was actually not a coincidence or something that happened all of a sudden, but it was, like, all planned. And, their lack of control over their lives is somehow as terrifying as the creature that is hunting them throughout the film.
And I like how you brought up earlier about that whole theme of... religion and that sort of existential thing of us going out into space and how small we are. Because when you do land on that planet and you see that engineer and there's that sort of whole dire, eerie history that is, sort of all sort of encapsulated through that sort of production design and H.R. Giger's work.
H.R. Giger did such a good job with the designs in this movie.
And it's just the whole design of it and just like what happened here. And there's something so colossal, and then underneath that there's something even more terrifying. And just like, I love that whole... Yeah, it's a graveyard, really. I mean, I love that whole... And just all these murals on the wall about what are these things? What are they praying to? Are they praying to it? What is...
it's the graveyard of something you can't even comprehend. Of a civilization so far from our own that you don't even understand what you're looking at. And... Yeah, sorry, Kyle.
And should we have kept it that way?
Yes. Yes.
We'll get to that
big time that. Big time that, though. Yeah, like the cat in the box thing. Like, it's like a whole thing of like, should you really look, or should you just leave it be? And it really is fascinating how none of these questions are answered in the slightest by the movie, and it really does make it like amazing. And I will say, I still to this day haven't seen Aliens, the sequel to this movie.
What?
Yeah,
what the
I haven't.
Fuck?
Weirdly enough, I watched the third one when I was a kid. It was awful.
You've not seen Aliens?
Yeah, I haven't seen Aliens.
Hell?
I haven't seen Aliens, and I have seen Prometheus, and I haven't seen Covenant either.
Covenant, right?
Oh, yeah.
Covenant, I think, is better than Prometheus, but not by much.
But yeah, it's really interesting. It just really feels like he creates this oppressive universe without, like, there's not that much world building. We don't get to know what the people of the planet Earth are doing. We don't get to know what their bosses are like it's just we are trapped with them in this journey from the beginning of the movie to the end. We are in the Nostromo, and we only see and do what the people of the Nostromo see and do, nothing outside of that. And that really creates claustrophobia in the middle of the void, which is fucking stellar, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, me and Kel talked about Alien when we did our unaired Monsters episode because of technical difficulties.
Yes, that was a shame.
I was talking,
looking forward to that.
The movie monster, or the movie villain that's scariest to me is still the Xenomorph. I mean, that thing to me is just the height of it, all the little details, the ribcage on the outside, the face that doesn't have eyes, the mouth within the mouth thing. I think the whole design of it, the mad things on its back.
I will say there is
absolutely terrifying.
There is so many things to its design. The fact that it doesn't have eyes is such an easy way to empathize and like see like the humanity or like connect to another creature. Just
a xenomorph with sad eyes.
Just you can. That's how you can communicate feeling and stuff. Eyes for us humans are such like a heavy kind of thing. Like just moving a line a little bit on an eye when you're drawing it can express so much emotion. You just get rid of those. There's no emotion. You cannot read this. You cannot comprehend it. And there is such a weird like unease with like the designs of everything to do with the xenomorph and the engineers and stuff. Everything is so phallic and shaped like organs and genitalia in a way that really makes you very uncomfortable without being overtly like, hey, these are sex organs that you're looking at.
I understand why Lewis loves it so much then.
No, but like that's the thing, like as a society, especially here in the Western world, like there's like sex organs are such an incredible taboo that like it does weirdly just make you uncomfortable to see these kind of like phallic things and these like openings that look like vaginas and shit like that all spread all over the ship. It's really weird. It's far enough from that organ for you not to instantly recognize it, but close enough for you to still feel like, what the fuck is going on here, you know? It really does get you into that thing. And same with like the idea of like a male pregnancy and stuff, like, you know, like there's a lot of like weird stuff like that really brings the unease. Kyle is laughing his fucking ass off because I said the word vagina.
No, because what happened was I just kind of like delved out for a second, and when I came back to,
I was
it was you
talking.
just going like vaginas on the wall. And I'm like, just randomly press plays an episode. They're gonna be really confused.
No, but it is true. It just, they have
Yeah.
that sort of that design of that, and of course it's meant to be invasive and meant to feel. Obviously, when I guess spoilers, when John Hurt is the first victim and the iconic chestburster scene happens, it is that whole invasive thing of the body. And that whole thing, the
fact
creation
that
of it, the whole, it's
I
very,
don't
very
think
disgusting and creepy.
Yeah, I don't think the protagonist being a woman is like a coincidence. I think it has a lot to do with the themes of invasion of the body that this movie has. The themes of like your own control over who you are and what you are, both from the corporations and the alien in this case, you know? It feels like there's a lot of thematic ideas explored to a very good point in this film. And honestly, it feels like it took them a lot of work to polish it to the point where it was. And it's really refreshing looking back at a film made so long ago with
1979.
Yeah, like none of the visual effects that we have today. A lot of incredible miniature and effects works and costuming and puppetry that's hold up so fucking well to this day. And absolutely. A film that is so, like, it just feels like the script was masticated. Like, it was generally run through over and over and over until they had something that worked, rather than rushed out because there was a deadline coming up. Like, this wasn't meant to be the start of anything. It was a standalone movie that just wanted to be good. And it really shows. And I really think Ridley's weird way of looking at the world really added a lot. His exploration of spirituality and the answers of, like, where we come from and what we are really add a lot to this film. I mean, it's one of my favorite films of all time.
Well, there you go. Alien, absolutely iconic. One of my absolute favourite Ridley Scott films as well. Right, Kyle, what about you? What's yours?
Mine's going to have to be The Martian. Ridley Scott's 2015
yes,
film.
No vaginas in this one, sadly.
Thanks. Just in case, parents were listening and can I show my kids The Martian? You can.
You can. You're fine. No phallic imagery.
No, there's not going to be language or sex references plentifully,
Yeah, but there's rockets, and those are very phallic, but apart from that...
Well, Kyle, you're calling me the perverse one. You got this guy on the show, man. She's like...
No, I'm the only fucking sane one here. This is the third film in the most unique trilogy of all time, which is people rescuing Matt Damon. A weird subgenre of movies following Saving Private Ryan, Interstellar technically, and then The Martian.
It's a pseudo trilogy.
It is a pseudo trilogy, and then if you want to include We Bought a Zoo, which is saving Matt Damon, physically and emotionally, you could include that.
I would.
Trilogy. Anyway, The Martian. Yeah, so based off Andy Weir's novel of the same name, I fucking love this film, like genuinely so much. From a book point where it's kind of told in these logs of astronaut. Matt Damon, what was his name? Mark Watney. Who's a botanist stranded on Mars after a storm basically comes through, and all his other crew have to leave. And you get a really, really kind of three main stories that are going on here. You have Mark Watney's survival on Mars, which is so interesting because it uses so much real science as they possibly can into the film. Given it's still science fiction, obviously, but it is a nice bit.
But it's like a hard science, basically.
Yeah, it's a hard science.
There was a lot of research done for the novel, and like there's a lot of like actual scientific basis.
Andy Weir does a lot kind of research when he makes these books, and you have the story of Jessica Chastain and the commanding crew on the Ares, I think is their ship called. Yes. Their kind of morals of like what we're going to do. We've left our crew
because they're orbiting Mars at this point. They don't know up to like a point in the movie that he's alive.
They've swung out from Mars. The whole thing is that they're like, do we stop at Earth or do we slingshot around and use gravity? And then you've got Jeff Daniels on Earth with NASA, and then kind of going, what the fuck are we going to do? How are we going to communicate with Mark? this guy's stranded on Mars. And
Yeah.
it is, honestly, from start to finish, I have watched this film so many times, and I'm constantly entertained by it.
It's so good.
For kind of Mark's kind of, he doesn't go insane, he doesn't get cabin fever, but he kind of, cause he uses this form of communicating
It's not
to his
Castaway,
log.
yeah.
We don't have a kind of Wilson moment, but he does kind of give out jokes and goes, I feel they won't mind me barging into their private, personal things since they abandoned me. That kind of those kind of jokes, and you get really kind of interesting science behind it, and then you get really great characters because you've got Sebastian Stan. Sean Bean's in it, and he doesn't die, which is good to see.
That's
Jeff
part
Daniels,
of the
Kristen
few.
Wiig.
That's kind of a spoiler itself, actually.
Sean Bean on Earth doesn't die. Benedict Wong's in it. Donald Glover's in it as well. As a great little,
it's a small role.
Great
yeah.
role, yeah.
And then you also, it builds up tension because you're kind of like, is this going to happen? And it's like, because the closer you get to the kind of conclusion of the film, the more, not ridiculous it gets, but the more kind of like, right, we're going to have to do some mad shit for this to happen. And it's such a kind of entertaining... Yeah, sure, shit does get kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then you've got the kind of final moments of the film, and you're like, really fucking... I thought, for a while I thought that was the most intense kind of space sequence I've seen, but then I went to see Gravity for the 10-year anniversary, and nothing gets past Gravity. But this was still really intense.
If anyone wants to see Gravity, wait for another anniversary screening. Do not watch it at home ever, because I'm sure it won't.
2033, baby. I'm going to go see it again.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it at home yet.
10 years. You got to wait. But yeah, and
thank God I watched
obviously
it the first time. Yeah.
They take a kind of span of what is, I think, 8 or 9 months, and really kind of put it into really nice, concise. It's almost 2 hours and a half.
It doesn't really feel as long as it is.
No, and as I was saying, it goes really kind of quickly.
The pacing is fucking fantastic.
The pacing is fantastic. The way they kind of handle all the characters, especially the ones in the ship, and they're like, are we going to do this? And they're all like, hell yeah. And then it's quickly like they have to like disappoint their families because it's like another year in space.
Yeah.
I just love this film so much, and it's such a weird. Not a weird film, but if I saw this film after seeing a lot of other, I wouldn't be able to immediately go Ridley Scott.
Definitely.
It's one of those I was like a bit surprised, but then looking back, and kind of like I could see him handling this sort of film.
Weirdly enough, kind of became his sort of comeback film because I think this previous 3, well, like I said, The Counselor and Exodus, Gods and Kings were the year before this. Yeah. I can't remember if he made something in 2013 off the top of my head. I think Prometheus was 2012.
The Counselor was 2013, Exodus, Gods and Kings was 2014, Prometheus was 20...
Yeah, so he went through a track and did that Robin Hood remake, and he went through this a pretty bad phase, and then Ridley Scott was kind of written off.
Yeah, because like after he did Gladiator, they gave him a lot of like historical ones where it's like big ancient history.
Well, you like Kingdom of Heaven, I thought.
I did like Kingdom of Heaven, though. I didn't like the theatrical release, though. That was awful. I sadly watched it first.
I really liked The Last Duel. I loved that film as well. I actually really enjoyed that.
Which I'm sure.
Do you know the thing I will say about The Martian? I absolutely hate that genre of film. I get a lot of anxiety from that genre of film. I've watched that movie like 3 times now.
You must love Gravity.
Fantastic. Yeah,
you hate what genre of film?
The whole
Stranded
stranded surviving thing. I don't like it. They drag out. The pacing always seems too slow. I hate watching people get crazy and desperate and stuff. But like, there was something about The Martian, and I believe it's the fact that the main character keeps his like upbeat attitude from most of the movie, which also makes the moments where he's losing hope hit so fucking hard. Like the fact that he's making jokes during this log that he's recording and stuff. Like whenever something goes wrong, and it generally hits him emotionally, and you see that in his face.
Yeah, that disappointment.
Yeah. Using the fellow's logic, he's never seen Lost in Space due to the absolute fear of the title alone. He just can't watch the show.
That I watched that movie so many times as a kid. It's absolutely awful, but I've watched it so many times.
But yeah, that was
also
Martian.
With The Martian, you might learn to love disco music. just like Matt Damon does. Because he's
Yeah.
listening to it all the time. I can't remember what specific. What was
Oh,
the
a lot
disc?
of
Was
Earth,
it
Wind and
the
Fire.
best of something, or was
Yeah,
It
it?
was like
a lot of
it was
Earth,
like
Wind and Fire.
70s disco or something.
Yeah,
And
it
he'd
was like
keep-
greatest hit sort of thing.
Yeah, and he would keep referencing them and everything, and he's, the potatoes. You'll never look at a potato the same.
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, thank
Feel
God
like
I don't
chips
have to
now.
eat as many potatoes as he does.
Yeah, thank God they didn't make the character Irish. That would have been insulting at that point.
Okay.
Oh, well,
Anyway,
you
let's-
know something about us. Gonzalo's on a roll today, man. He's trying to be lewd, and he's now trying to be a bit.
It's after dark. It's
Controversial there, I don't know.
it's after dark, guys.
It's always after dark at this time of the year.
Well, for you guys,
There you
yeah. If we do it before 6, I'm good.
Well, my choice is, of course, one of my absolute favourite films of all
Yes.
time. Is Blade Runner, specifically the final cut.
Oh.
I know I've mentioned Blade Runner a few times on the show, but technically I've never openly talked about the film itself, because we had our greatest sequels episode when we talked about 2049, and of course our scores episode when I talked about Vangelis' score to this.
Yes.
But I've never really got down and tackled.
Yeah,
Blade
you've never
Runner
told us
itself.
exactly why you love this movie as much as you do.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
a good
so
film.
I specifically say the final cut is because, of course, the original 1982 version, the theatrical cut,
Yeah.
Ridley Scott lost control of that film to the studio, who wanted to make it a bit more accessible and easy to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
There comes the Harrison Ford.
Though if you're
awful
watching one with
narration.
narration, that's not. You shouldn't be watching
That's
it.
not the right
Just-
one.
Just
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the right one, basically. If you
and then
hear
you got-
Harrison Ford barely trying to speak, that's not the
Yeah.
one. That's you're watching the new
Yeah,
Indiana
the
Jones.
one where
I mean,
I don't know if it was a rumor or he did intentionally try and ruin the
it seems
the
like he
narration
did.
so
Yeah,
that
I
because
think
Harrison
he's
Ford
had
hated it, he
interviews
was like,
and
"This
stuff.
is stupid,"
Yeah.
and I don't know if he did it drunk. I feel like he might have been drinking, and I
He
don't know if I'm making that up. Or
sounded
if that
you
was a
love
rumor.
it when
very
actors possibly
sloshed.
drink on set, Lewis. So
Yeah.
It's always entertaining, to be fair, at least when you have that theory. Anyway, so Blade Runner, of course, stars Harrison Ford as Deckard, and so it's set in an alternative 2019 Los Angeles. And Deckard, who's a retired Blade Runner, and a Blade Runner's job is to hunt down replicants and quote-unquote retire them, instead of, say the more brutal thing that is, kill them.
Murder them in
And he's
cold
ordered by
blood.
his former supervisor to hunt down 4 replicants, Roy Batty, Leon Zora, and Pris, as they have escaped a Mars colony, killing 23 people to try and get off the planet. And they've left their colony because they hope to extend their lives, as replicants can only live about 4 years in the next
so they've-
6 models in this film.
So they're coming back to Earth because that's where the company that creates the replicants is, to
Yes.
try and find a loophole to their short
Try
lifespans,
to
basically.
try to find Tyrell, who can maybe
Yeah.
extend their lives.
From the Tyrell
And,
Corporation. Yeah.
And so what you get here really is this story of remorse and empathy. You've got 2 parallel stories running here with Roy Batty and Deckard, who are both, I'd say, becoming human, even though Deckard is already human, and also
Or
what turns
are
a
they?
human, yes, and what turns a human into an android, and and that sort of thing is that Deckard, of course, that's the parallel thing. The villain is not really the villain, even though he's murdered plenty of people, but you don't really feel like he's the villain. I think that's a really great sort of protagonist-antagonist contrast there, is that one is actually
Marvel.
more human than the other.
Hey,
and it's
Marvel!
You're
Marvel.
obsessed with Marvel. Shut up.
Look at, that's how you do empathetic villains right there.
This interesting parallel story that's running here. And so Deckard is the machine here. He is following orders without question, or, you have these whole things going on how everyone is kind of following instructions, or like the capitalist ideas, because everywhere has these massive billboards for brands, or there are this go off world and you can live a better life, chase the American dream, and then potentially you can have a better life than living in this rain-soaked,
Los Angeles.
unnatural
Yeah.
LA, exactly. And while Batty is not physically human, he fights for his life like no other person here. And since he's only 4 years old as well, Roy is sort of unlike Rachel in the film, who's a different Nexus model, is born with a memory, or at least she doesn't know she's a replicant at first. I'm going to go full spoilers here. If you've not seen it, it's like 40 plus years
This is a
old.
really old movie, guys.
It's a really old film.
Also, spoilers isn't going to ruin it for you. It's
true.
a really good movie.
And so all he understands and all he has to go through life is pain. He was born a slave. That's all he knows, and all he understands is pain and misery. really, and yet he still appreciates life more than any human being in this
That we
film,
see, yeah.
which I find really interesting. And it all comes down to that final confrontation as well, where everything comes together. Is that final fight between Roy and Deckard, and after Deckard's killed Pris and Leon and can't remember their other names. Sorry. Instead of just killing Deckard, he does this interesting thing, is where he plays with him, he scares him, he jumps out walls and chases him down, even though he's much faster, much stronger.
Even though he could kill him at any point, basically.
Kill him instantly, right? He wants to play with him and he wants him to experience fear. Like he says, quite an experience living in fear, isn't it? As he stares him down, as he's hanging on for dear life. And then, but what that does, and this is why I think, one of the best endings ever, is he then sees Deckard fight for his life just as he's fought for his life, and then he then gains an appreciation for all life itself, not just his own. And then of course he sits down and says the iconic "Tears in the Rain," very brief dialogue, which I think Rodger Hauer improvised himself. And there's that. I love that. There's that silence and astonishment from Deckard at what he's seeing. A man who's murdered many people has now witnessed someone else fight for their life and understand and appreciate life, and then they sort of come to this understanding, and in that moment Deckard becomes human again, or is he human? Of course, we'll come to that debate in a second. And there's just
but it is that whole it's that like whole concept of like when a human being is forced to kill other human beings, not because they want to, just but because it's their job, like made us like a job and stuff. Like even though they're not human, they're replicants. It's like he has lost his humanity by the time we meet him. Like he is, like whether he's human or not, like his humanity is totally gone. He's been executing people for a living. And he's completely detached from like that feeling of other people, and we do see that throughout his like living alone in his apartment. He doesn't really have any friends or like any kind of like like he's just completely isolated from the rest of the world, which is like even made more obvious by the fact that the entirety of the world is crammed into this one small space. Like he is surrounded by thousands of people and yet still wholly alone.
And also it's quite interesting because he like explains that killing a replicant is like turning off a machine. He just sees them as machines. And there's also that brilliant change from, this is obviously based on Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yes.
In the book they're called androids, but Ridley Scott wanted to change that. It's like androids immediately the audience would be like, oh, they're just androids, sort of dehumanising them while watching the film. So he decided replicants was better. And there's that quote where more human than human, and it's like, they are, because they appreciate their existence more than humanity, which I love. But when he kills Zora, he actually it's a horrible murder.
It's horrible.
And she keeps fighting as well. Like he shoots her in the back, and then she keeps going through these windows, and then eventually dies. When he kills her, he actually does experience remorse. He's like quite taken aback about what he's done, and of course has to go home and have his drink, and then tells Rachel, because she has to kill Leon, oh, it's like, you get the chills, don't worry, like you get over it. And then he turns back into sort of that emotionless killer. But then he also, of course, falls in love with Rachel, who he knows is not human, and yet he doesn't seem to care anymore, and he's sort of losing all his prejudice and all that in time. And that's why it's just about this man becoming human again, and that's why I love that story. Now, of course, there's other things. I mean, look, visual effects wise, it's absolutely still holds up to this day. It's absolutely beautiful if you own it on Blu-ray or 4K or something like that. It's an astonishing film to look at.
Stunning, like honestly.
Douglas Trumbull was the special effects photographer, supervisor on the film, who actually became a director in his own right. And it's so it has a realistic tinge to it. It's all grimy and dirty, and yet so expansive. And of course, it inspired every other city dystopia for decades onwards. I mean, Akira, obviously very recently after that film, it was obviously very inspired by Blade Runner and many other films in itself. And of course, visually speaking, cinematically, I should say, holds up astonishingly well, as well as just its writing and its themes, and its whole DNA is so rich. I mean, there's so much discussion written about Blade Runner because it's so has endless discourse over it. And now, let's talk about the Deckard thing, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because I actually can't remember your guys' opinions on this. Do you think he's a replicant? Technically, it doesn't matter, right? If he is one or not. Because it's about a human becoming human again, or it's about an android becoming human, is the sort of the story. But, Kothal, what do you think?
Okay, so for me, I think the meaning of the film is stronger if he's not a replicant, but I also like I like not having an answer to that. I liked not knowing, because I thought it was a good way, like, functionally within the story, making you question this protagonist's humanity right at the end is a good way of saying, like, repeating the idea of, like, does it fucking matter? Like, at this point, when it's so close to be human and not human, does it really matter? So the whole idea of his dreams, and then the little paper thing, and like
the unicorn, of course.
Yeah, like it creates this question of like, was he human? Was he not? It asks you the question, and you as an audience member, your response is, well, given what I just saw, I don't care. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And
that's
it's like, well, the
supposed to
character
be.
of Gaff. That's the thing. It's like that's the main argument. Of course, this was added in the final cut because Ridley Scott.
Yeah, because it was
believes he's a
removed.
replicant.
Yeah,
It was removed. He added the whole unicorn dream, and if Gaff always makes the origami figures, and of course at the end, Deckard finds the origami unicorn.
But at the same time, like, I think it works well as an ambiguous thing, because if he, like, it could work either way, and I like the fact that it's not confirmed, because when, like, if he is human, then, like you said, it's the contrasting stories of a human losing his humanity and regaining it, and an android who's just finds it, basically, and kind of, like, gives it back to the human. Like, this replicant reminds this human of his humanity. Both the antagonist and the love interest of this movie are both replicants, and it's through his interaction with both of them that he actually starts becoming human, you know?
Interesting. Well,
what LA become human, you could say. Sorry, that's a terrible joke for...
Anyway, robot.
Yes.
You think he's a replicant?
I think he's a replicant.
That's interesting.
I think here's a cool idea that they made replicants that could hunt replicants. Like, I thought that was like a
that sounds very much like a capitalist.
That's kind of how that's kind of I thought. I thought they would make a new version of replicants that could hunt down replicants. Obviously, I don't know how it kind of works in with the sequel. I think when I first saw
the sequel, that's kind of the best. Great thing about 2049 is that they don't give you an answer. I think a lot of people might have gone in. It
feels like
it.
They give you one, but then it feels like they don't, and then it feels like they do, and then because it's about her, it's not about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Ridley Scott actually recently in an interview said he really wishes he made 2049, and I'm actually glad he didn't, because with his track record with long delayed sequels, it's not been great. But also, I feel like he would have leaned into an answer, because he likes to give answers to things that don't need answers.
He does.
So I think he would have given us an answer.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like I'm glad. I mean, in an alternate, I would have loved to go to an alternate universe and see what he would have made for the sequel. But I'm glad.
He would have made him a cyborg, like literally half human brain, half robot brain, and being like, oh,
yeah. But like you say, Kyle, like making him a replicant whose job is to kill other replicants. It's even like more fucking barbaric. It's like that scene in Clone Wars where the clones shoot themselves like in a barra that makes me cry every fucking time, you know? Like, it's this idea of like you're creating someone to destroy their kind and teaching them to dehumanize who they are, you know? Like, that is also brutal and horrifying and very capitalism. And this movie is very capitalism.
And once again, of course, you get these religious ideas as well. I mean, like, this is actually... There is a parallel between this and Prometheus, where the creation goes to meet its creator, and then goes and kills it. There's that whole thing about where we are in the universe as well, is constantly questioned through Ridley Scott's work. Now, like I say, I like to believe he's human, but of course Ridley Scott purposely putting those things to very much lean towards it. But I like how Harrison Ford and Hampton Venture and David Webb Peoples both think he's human, and then Ridley Scott thinks he's a replicant, which is kind of perfect how you have the writer and actor, and then the guy sort of in control of the whole thing, clashing over that thing, and there's not really a definitive answer. But of course, once again, in classic Ridley Scott fashion, if you listen to him on the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable, he goes, he's a fucking replicant. So he feels very strongly about that.
Do you think if you ask Harrison Ford, he just goes, I don't care.
I don't care. Probably, most likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I do really like the twist itself as well. I think from a writing point of view, it's a really good one. Mm-hmm. You are seeing him have dreams of a unicorn in a fantasy forest and stuff. This is both like also like an idea of like what humanity lost with like this age of like, you know, consumption and enterprise and stuff. Like it's you see it's the only forest you see in the whole fucking thing. Like you don't ever see nature
only
ever.
Green you ever see in the whole thing.
It's
even
like
the animals are fake. So.
Like and it's like the magic of like the living world and the natural world and stuff. So it has more meaning outside of just setting up a twist. And also, I love that at the end, it's as ambiguous of like this guys who makes paper figurines made a unicorn. He didn't make it specifically because it's a unicorn. We don't know if he knows exactly if like it's left up to you and to Decker in this moment to question. Like he's the one questioning. Wait, is this a coincidence or is this meant as a message? And then he turns away. Yeah.
And he has a little smirk.
Yeah, he has a little smirk.
I love that
and he's
dialogue
like,
that's
I don't give a fuck.
echoed again by Gaff.
Yes.
It says, you know, too bad she won't live, but then again, who does?
Yes.
I love how that's echoed again.
As
And that's
in,
telling
like,
him to go live, Deckard, go live.
Yeah. And like again, like it's
that.
that thing where like it's vague enough to leave the possibility for both of them. I will say, in the name of this director, like Ridley Scott, it is hard as a creative when you've put work into thinking about something that you are willingly going to withhold from your audience, and like something that you've thought through and that you've actually planned out, and you're like, okay, all of this I'm gonna keep a secret and never tell anyone. That's hard. And he's like in his fucking 80s. At that age, I've heard people don't give a fuck anymore. So, you know, like, sure, man, tell us the behind the scenes. It's fine. I don't think it takes away from it, because at that point, like, there is a little bit of death of the author, of the sense of, like, you know, a work can speak on its own, regardless of the author's intentions with that work, you know?
And I do love it. It's one of these things, you know, when people have different interpretations of certain endings or sort of things, I always like to, you know, I was like, oh, well, I still feel like my point's correct. But it's one of these things where I don't actually care what version you think of. And
I think that's the powerful thing about that. Yeah, like, I love the discussion. I love watching films. I love discussing the film we just watched so much more than I love actually watching the film. It's so much fun. So like any kind of ending like this where like you can argue for and against different points, and you can see what other people took away from it, because at the end of it, that's what art is about, communicating something. So it's fantastic to see people get messages and read things into a piece of work that you might have not, or even ones that the author didn't even intend. Like, that's the amazing thing of humanity, you know? Yeah.
God, Blade Runner. I absolutely adore it. Now, actually, very quickly, before we sign off here, what are you guys' least favourite Ridley Scott films? I know I love ending on a downer a lot of time, but...
I'm going to have to Google
I'll tell you what,
this.
I'll go first. I'm going to go first. For me... Out of all the films, I've seen a lot of his films. I've not seen A Good Year with oh my god, I forgot Russell Crowe. Sorry, I've heard that one's pretty bad. But out of the ones I've seen, I'm gonna have to go House of Gucci. House of Gucci was just absolutely just the biggest drag in the world. It has such bizarre directorial decisions, and of course, Jared Leto is a completely different film to everyone else. It's quite funny to watch, but also the rest of the film happens and it's pretty boring. So House of Gucci is my least favourite one of Ridley Scott's that I've seen. What about you, Gonzalo?
I'm lucky I haven't seen that many of his bad films. I missed House of Gucci because I saw the trailer and I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't know. It's really interesting because I think one of the, like... I know I wasn't like on board with Prometheus and everything that movie did, but I still thought it was pretty like interesting. I'm gonna say his Robin Hood movie is one of my least favorites. Right. And again, I haven't seen that many, but like that was just really bland and very early 2000s, and it feels like
it was made in 2010.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like it feels like it was one of those like shooter games that came out in like 2004 or something like that, made into a movie. Like it's just like so grey and bland, and it's supposed to be this whole, I don't know, it feels like a parody of a previous movie of his that was way better, you know, because it very much is same fucking actor, same kind of plot point about freedom vaguely and stuff, and it's just really bad. It's just really bad. So yeah.
Fucking hate Alien Covenant.
I knew you'd say Alien Covenant.
I just hate it. If you have to have a 10-minute YouTube video before a film, something is inherently wrong anyway, okay?
Yes, that is true. I don't understand why there isn't a version of the film where the YouTube clips aren't just in the film. Like, also the film is under 2 hours, so what would 10 minutes really do? Like, I don't understand.
Wait. I don't know this because I haven't seen the film. You have to watch a 10-minute video before you start watching the film.
Yeah, there's a whole thing of David dropping eggs down on a planet of engineers.
A huge plot point.
Yeah.
So you get one with the crew before they go into cryo sleep, just to sort of just like, who's the crew? You know, just like, you know.
See, that's just important. We've talked about how important establishing the characters of the crew is in his Alien.
And it's the only scene James Franco's in, who, when you see a picture of him in the film, you're like, why is there a picture of James Franco? If you haven't seen the clip, it's very weird. And then the other one is really important to David
a well-known face and
Elizabeth Shaw's character.
Yeah.
Because of course the decimation of the engineers, and also hints at what he does to Elizabeth Shaw, which is then shown in the film anyway. But it's very strange why you'd cut that scene as well. Like, I don't understand why you had to watch this.
I didn't understand it. I don't like that film.
Yeah, I get it. It's like Alien, like, light. It's like as if it's sort of like if they decide to reboot Alien and have like a director who's directed like one other thing go in and try and make an Alien movie, and everyone would be like, this is just a cheap Alien knockoff. But it's Ridley Scott. It's so bizarre.
Do you know the thing I actually did like about Prometheus is the fact that we didn't really get a xenomorph in that movie up until like, you know, the post.
Oh, you got the weird.
Yeah, but you didn't.
Weird one.
Yeah, but you didn't really like. It's not an Alien movie. It's about the Alien universe, but it's about something else. It had a lot of flaws,
of course,
but I kind of liked exploring the whole kind of like religiousness, the origins of life kind of bullshit. It was interesting, you know. I need to watch Covenant.
And the problem is with Alien Covenant is that it does unravel a lot of the whole mystery of the xenomorph. Who made them? What are they? We know now. We know. It's just David.
It's just David in a lab.
Okay.
Well, to be fair, there's something to that, you know, Kel. You know, you've got the engineers made human beings, and human beings made the androids, and then androids made the perfect organism.
Michael Fassbender was bored in a.
To be fair, he's the best part of Alien.
Oh yeah, I've seen clips from this movie. He's
the best part of those
David and Walter. Yeah, for sure. But there you go. Alien Covenant and Gucci and House of Gucci and Robin Hood. Those are not the best films in the world. But that will wrap up today's show. So thank you, Gonzalo, for joining.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you, Kyle, as well.
You're welcome. Gonzalo gave more to this episode, so I was happy to hear.
I needed to balance out with the last one, you know, where I just sat there and said, "Huh."
On next week's episode, we are going to be doing a big spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review for Ridley Scott's Napoleon. So that will be a big topic on next week's episode. But look, we just gave our opinions on Alien, The Martian, Blade Runner, The Final Cut, House of Gucci, Alien Covenant, and Robin Hood. But at the end of the day, those were our unwanted opinions. Thank you very much.